"Talk to my deaf daughter," shouted the arrogant billionaire, his voice echoing through Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant like a cruel thunderclap. William Blackstone rose from his VIP table, pointing dramatically at the 16-year-old girl sitting next to him. "If you can, I'll give you $50,000 and my blessing to work anywhere decent." The black waitress remained motionless, her hands gripping the crystal tray tightly as all eyes in the Golden Crown turned to her. Kesha Williams, 28, never imagined her night shift would end up being turned into a public spectacle by one of the most powerful men on the East Coast. "But when you fail," Blackstone continued, savoring each word like expensive wine. "And you will fail. You will admit in front of everyone here that sign language is for losers who can't afford real solutions." His cruel laughter cut through the tense silence, "and obviously you will be fired on the spot." Blackstone's daughter, Emma, was pale-faced, tears streaming silently as her hands moved frantically in desperate signs. "Please stop this. She doesn't deserve it." But William completely ignored his own daughter's silent pleas. Kesha watched the young woman, and something fundamental changed in her posture. She was no longer the invisible employee who served $1,000 bottles of champagne. For 5 years, she had cleaned these tables, endured racist comments disguised as jokes, and remained silent while men like Blackstone used their wealth as a weapon of humiliation. "I accept your challenge, Mr. Blackstone," she said in a voice that held not a hint of fear. A predatory smile spread across William's face. He had just found his entertainment for the evening, destroying yet another person who dared to exist in his world of privilege. What this real estate mogul didn't know was that he had just awakened something that should have remained dormant. Kesha walked up to Emma and with fluid movements that took the young woman's breath away, began signing with a precision that rivaled any professional interpreter in the country. Her hands created complex sentences in perfect ASL with grammatical facial expressions that could only come from years of intensive practice. "Hi, Emma. My name is Kesha. You're not alone tonight." Emma stood completely still, her eyes widening in utter shock. At that moment, before all the eyes that expected her inevitable failure, Kesha held a secret that was about to rewrite the most humiliating night in William Blackstone's life. If you're wondering how a simple waitress has mastered the language that a billionaire despises, be sure to subscribe to the channel because this story of prejudice and underestimation is just beginning, and the twist that follows will leave you speechless. William Blackstone hadn't reached the age of 52, as one of the most feared real estate moguls in the United States by being kind. His $3.2 billion fortune had been built on the rubble of evicted families, gentrified communities, and dreams destroyed by ruthless contracts. And at that moment, watching a simple black waitress converse fluently with his defective daughter, he felt something he hated more than anything. Loss of control. "These are just basic gestures," he muttered to his tablemates, the billionaire Peterson couple and Senator Mitchell, all watching the exchange between Kesha and Emma with growing fascination. Anyone can learn a handful of memoized signs. But inside, William was boiling. For 16 years since Emma was born profoundly deaf, he had invested millions in cochlear implants, experimental therapies, and exclusive treatments in Switzerland. All to fix what he considered a shameful genetic flaw in his perfect line of elite wasps. Emma had never smiled so much in her father's presence. Her hands flew through the air as she told Kesha about her secret passion for art, about the books she read in secret, about the ASL videos she watched on YouTube when William wasn't home. For 5 glorious minutes, she was just a normal teenager talking to someone who really understood her. "Daddy never lets me use sign language in public," Emma signed, fresh tears glistening in her eyes. "He says it makes our family look weak." Kesha felt a familiar rage burning in her chest. During her 5 years at Golden Crown, she had been a silent witness to the casual cruelty of the white elite. The comments about her exotic hair when she wore braids, the jokes about how articulate she was for someone of her background, the way some clients talked about her in the third person, as if she were a piece of decorative furniture. William stood up abruptly, his patience finally wearing thin. "Enough of this nonsense, Emma. You have 5 minutes to finish the charade and we are going home." His voice cut through the conversation like a cold blade. "And you?" Who he pointed at Kesha with contempt. "Stop filling my daughter's head with these ridiculous ideas about acceptance. She doesn't need to accept anything. She needs to overcome." It was then that Kesha did something no employee had ever done in William Blackstone's presence. She looked him straight in the eye without lowering her head, without looking away, and signaled a response to Emma that she translated aloud. "Tell your father that the only thing his daughter needs to overcome is the shame he feels for her." The silence that followed was absolute. The waiters stopped in the middle of their service. Customers at other tables turned to watch. Time itself seemed to freeze in the face of the audacity of a black employee publicly challenging one of the most powerful men in the country. William Blackstone had humiliated senators, destroyed businessmen, and made governors beg for mercy. But never in his entire life had a mere employee dared to confront him in this way. His face flushed with a mixture of anger and something even more dangerous, malicious curiosity. "Do you want to know who you're challenging?" he asked, his voice low and threatening. "I own this restaurant. I own the building. I own half the block. With one phone call, I can make sure you never work in Manhattan again. With 2 calls, I can make your life a living hell." Kesha remained motionless, but something changed in her eyes. A spark of something William couldn't immediately identify, but should have recognized if he were smarter. The dangerous calm of someone who had weathered far worse storms and lived to tell the tale. "Mr. Blackstone," she said softly. "With all due respect, you may own many things, but you do not own the right to destroy your own daughter's spirit." Emma watched the exchange with fascination and terror. She had never seen anyone defend her like this, and she had certainly never seen her father so visibly shaken by a mere waitress. What William Blackstone didn't know was that every cruel word, every veiled threat, only confirmed something Kesha had suspected from the moment she set foot in that restaurant 5 years ago. And while everyone thought they had witnessed the end of the career of a waitress who was too brave for her own good, they were actually about to discover that some people keep secrets too powerful to be revealed before the right time. Behind the scenes at the Golden Crown, far from the gaze of the elite dining at crystal tables, Kesha found Emma hiding in the women's restroom, crying silently. Her tears were not just from sadness, but from a complex mixture of humiliation, anger, and something she had rarely felt before, hope. "No one has ever stood up for me like that," Emma signaled when Kesha entered. "Is my father right? Am I really an embarrassment to the family?" Kesha knelt beside the teenager, her hands moving with a fluidity that went far beyond what anyone could learn casually. "Your deafness isn't a defect. It's part of who you are, and who you are is extraordinary." What Emma didn't know was that Kesha had grown up with a younger deaf sister in Detroit. For 15 years, she had navigated between 2 worlds. The hearing world where she worked to support her family, and the deaf world, where she found true community. She wasn't just fluent in ASL. She had been president of the Deaf Student Association at Howard University, where she majored in psychology, with a concentration in disability advocacy. But that was before the accident that changed everything. Before her sister Ashley died in a hospital where no interpreter was available during a medical emergency. Before Kesha discovered that medical malpractice had been covered up by expensive lawyers hired by the hospital. Before she lost everything trying to fight a system that protected the rich and powerful. "Miss Williams." The shrill voice of Margaret Thornfield, the restaurant manager, echoed down the hallway. "Mr. Blackstone is demanding your immediate presence. And I suggest you prepare to apologize profusely if you want to keep your job." Kesha rose slowly, but not before signaling something to Emma that made the young woman's eyes widen. Trust me, your father is about to learn a lesson he should have learned a long time ago. When they returned to the main hall, William had gathered a small audience of his billionaire friends. Senator Mitchell, known for his anti-immigration policies, the Petersons, who had made their fortune by exploiting immigrant workers in their factories, and 3 other tycoons who viewed employees as disposable pieces in their power games. "Ah, the star of the evening is back," William announced sarcastically, gesturing for Kesha to approach. "I hope you use those minutes to reflect on your position here." What William didn't realize was that during those minutes in the bathroom, Kesha had sent a simple text message to a number she hadn't used in 2 years. The reply had come almost instantly. "I'm on my way. Time to show who you really are." "Mr. Blackstone," Kesha said calmly, "I'd like to make a counter-offer." The entire table laughed, as if she had told a particularly absurd joke. A black waitress making a counter-offer to one of the most powerful men in America. The audacity was almost comical. "That's rich," said Mrs. Peterson, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "William, your employees really don't know their place, do they? If you're so convinced that people like me are inferior," Kesha continued, completely ignoring the laughter, "how about we make this really interesting? I'll double the bet to $100,000. The silence that followed was absolute. William blinked, clearly not expecting this escalation. "You don't have $100,000 to bet, sweetheart. You're a waitress." "True," Kesha admitted with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "but I know someone who does, and he's particularly interested in people who underestimate others based on prejudice." It was then that the doors of the Golden Crown opened, and a figure who made several faces at the table pale entered the restaurant. Dr. Marcus Jefferson, one of the most feared civil rights lawyers in the country, walked toward the table with the confidence of someone who had destroyed the careers of very powerful men. William recognized him immediately. Jefferson had cost one of his closest friends' companies $80 million in an employment discrimination lawsuit the previous year. "Kesha," Dr. Jefferson said warmly, embracing her as if they were old friends. "Sorry I'm late. The traffic was terrible." He turned to the table with a smile that was pure polite predation. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Marcus," Kesha said, and William noticed that she had completely abandoned the subservient deference that employees usually showed in his presence. "I was just explaining to Mr. Blackstone about our little bet." Dr. Jefferson pulled up a chair and sat down without being invited, a move that made several men at the table shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Ah, yes, Mr. Blackstone's famous hospitality. I've heard a lot about it." William felt a chill run up his spine. There was something about the way Jefferson said heard that suggested very specific knowledge about things that should have remained private. "I can't believe we haven't been introduced," William said, extending his hand hesitantly. "Dr. Marcus Jefferson, Jefferson and Associates," he replied, shaking his hand firmly. "We specialize in cases of discrimination, workplace harassment, and civil rights violations, primarily against companies that believe money makes them untouchable." The mention of his specialty made William's blood run cold. He had spent years carefully crafting a public reputation as a philanthropist, even while his private business practices were questionable. The last thing he needed was a civil rights lawyer investigating his business dealings. "What a lovely coincidence," Mrs. Peterson said nervously. "Perhaps we should." "Oh, please don't let my presence interrupt," Dr. Jefferson interrupted gently. "I'm particularly interested in observing how people in positions of power treat those they perceive as subordinates. It's educational." Kesha turned to Emma, who had been watching the entire exchange with growing fascination. "Emma, your father seems eager to demonstrate his opinions on sign language. How about we give him that opportunity?" What happened next made observers realize that they weren't simply witnessing a discussion between boss and employee. It was something much more significant. A battle between different worlds where money and power on one side clashed with intelligence and purpose on the other. And Kesha Williams, the waitress William Blackstone had assumed was just another disposable employee, was about to show exactly who she really was. But first, she needed him to dig his own grave a little deeper. Because some lessons can only be learned the hard way. And some men need to lose everything before they understand the true value of human dignity. Dr. Jefferson, William said, forcing a smile that fooled no one. What an unexpected pleasure. I didn't know you knew our employee. Oh, I've known Kesha for a long time, Dr. Jefferson replied, pulling out his phone and placing it on the table with the recorder turned on. In fact, she's one of the most talented lawyers I've ever worked with. The silence that followed was deafening. William blinked several times, as if the words didn't make sense. Lawyer impossible. She's a waitress. Was Kesha corrected calmly, removing her apron and revealing an elegant blazer underneath. Dr. Kesha Williams, Harvard Law School graduate, specialist in civil rights and workplace discrimination. And for 5 years, I worked as a waitress here to systematically document your illegal practices. William's face turned completely pale. The Petersons looked at each other nervously. Senator Mitchell seemed to want to hide under the table, and Emma watched everything with absolute fascination, finally understanding that she was witnessing something historic. During these 5 years, Kesha continued, removing a tablet from her bag. I documented 847 cases of racial discrimination, 312 labor violations, 156 sexually inappropriate comments, and 89 specific cases of harassment based on prejudice. She slid her finger across the screen. All recorded, photographed, and documented with date, time, and witnesses. You can't. That's illegal. William stammered, his legendary composure completely gone. Actually, Dr. Jefferson interjected with a predatory smile. In New York, only one party needs to consent to the recording. And considering that Kesha was your employee, she had the legal right to document possible crimes in the workplace. Kesha tapped the screen and a recording began to play. William's unmistakable voice echoed through the restaurant. Obviously, we can't hire any more of these people. We already have too many black people in the kitchen. Customers are starting to notice. This was recorded 18 months ago, Kesha explained calmly. During a meeting with managers, where you discussed discriminatory hiring policies, William stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. Margaret, Margaret, he yelled at the manager. Call security. This woman is extorting us. Actually, Mr. Blackstone. Margaret Thornfield appeared, but she was not alone. 2 federal investigators accompanied her, showing their badges. I'm Agent Thornfield, FBI, Hate Crimes Division. I've been undercover here for 3 years working with Drive Williams. Williams' world completely fell apart at that moment. There was not just one, but 2 federal agents working in his restaurant. His paranoia about control had been useless. He had been under investigation for years without even suspecting it. During our investigation, Agent Thornfield continued, we discovered a systemic pattern of racial discrimination in hiring, unequal pay based on race, and what caught our attention most, a communication network among elite establishments sharing blacklists of non-white employees. She pulled documents from her briefcase. Emails between you and other business owners, Mr. Blackstone messages where you coordinated to ensure that certain problematic employees, usually those who reported discrimination, would never get jobs at similar establishments. Emma watched with her mouth agape. For the first time in 16 years, she was seeing her father completely unguarded, exposed as the cruel man he had always been, but whom she had never had the courage to confront. And there's more, Kesha said, connecting her phone to a portable speaker. Mr. Blackstone, do you recognize this conversation? The recording that began to play caused several customers at other tables to stop and listen. It was William's voice drunk at a private party 6 months ago. The problem with these people is that they don't know their place. You give a black person an opportunity, and soon they think they deserve the same rights as us. That's why I make a point of constantly reminding them that they are replaceable. Turn that off. William roared, trying to grab the phone, but Dr. Jefferson stepped in between them. This was recorded during Mr. Peterson's birthday party, Kesha explained calmly. 43 guests were present, including 2 judges, a district attorney, and several businessmen. Everyone laughed when you said that. Mrs. Peterson was visibly panicked. We didn't. That was taken out of context. The context, Agent Thornfield replied, was a discussion about keeping non-white employees in line through psychological intimidation. We have video as well, courtesy of the Peterson Mansion security system. William had sat down heavily, his head in his hands. His entire empire, his entire carefully constructed reputation, was crumbling in real time before an audience that included not only his friends, but also other restaurant patrons, who are now pulling out phones to record the spectacle. The most ironic part, Kesha continued, her voice gaining a strength that made everyone shiver, is that you spent 5 years humiliating employees, making racist comments, treating people like disposable property, and all of this in front of a civil rights lawyer who was documenting every word, every gesture, every moment of cruelty. She turned to Emma, signaling as she spoke, "Your daughter is deaf, Mr. Blackstone, not stupid. She understood every cruel word you said about me, about other employees, about people you consider inferior. And for 5 years, she watched me being humiliated by you, knowing I didn't deserve it, but unable to do anything because you taught her that she was worthless, too." Emma stood up and for the first time in her life, signed something to her father that wasn't an apology, or an attempt to appease him. Kesha translated, she said she's ashamed to bear your surname, and that she's proud to finally meet someone who had the courage to stand up to you. The tears streaming down William's face now were not from anger, but from something far more devastating. The realization that he had lost not only his reputation and possibly his freedom, but also the respect of the one person whose love he should have protected above all else. The federal documents will be filed on Monday, Dr. Jefferson announced, putting away his papers. Systemic discrimination, civil rights violations, conspiracy to harm employees, and creation of a hostile work environment. The investigation will expand to all of your establishments and business partners. Kesha looked at William one last time. There was no cruel triumph in her eyes, only the cold satisfaction of someone who had served justice after years of patience. "Do you know what I learned in these 5 years serving your tables, Mr. Blackstone? That money can buy many things, but it cannot buy decency, emotional intelligence, or the ability to see other human beings as equals." As federal agents escorted a stunned William Blackstone out of the Golden Crown under the flash of cell phone cameras and the shocked murmurs of customers, one question hung in the air. In a world where power and privilege seemed to protect the cruel, was it possible that true justice would finally prevail over years of systematic impunity? 6 months after that night that rewrote destinies, William Blackstone sat alone in a modest apartment in Queens, far from the glass towers he once commanded. His empire had collapsed like dominoes, restaurants closed, hotels sold to pay federal fines, and a reputation so destroyed that even taxi drivers refused his fares when they recognized his name. The federal investigation had uncovered a network of discrimination that spanned decades. Dozens of victims had come forward, inspired by Kesha's courage. William now faced 47 civil lawsuits and a criminal conviction that could result in years in prison. His former billionaire friends avoided his calls, as if they were radioactive. Meanwhile, Kesha Williams walked the halls of Jefferson and Associates as a full partner, a promotion that came with national media coverage celebrating her 5-year justice operation. Her first case as a partner, representing Emma Blackstone in the fight for her inheritance rights, which William was trying to block in retaliation. "Dr. Williams," Emma said, signing fluently during their weekly meeting. I never thought it would be possible to feel proud of who I am. At 17, she now attended an elite school for the deaf, where she had discovered an entire community of brilliant young people who communicated in her natural language. Emma's transformation was striking. Away from her father's toxic shadow, she had blossomed as an artist, activist, and student. Her TikTok videos about deaf pride had millions of views, and she had become a national spokesperson for young people with disabilities. My father tried to make me ashamed of being deaf. You taught me that it's my superpower. The Golden Crown, now under new management after Blackstone's forced bankruptcy, had become a symbol of transformation. Margaret Thornfield, revealed as Agent Thornfield, ran a national anti-discrimination training program that used the restaurant as a case study. Posters on the walls showed Kesha receiving civil rights awards, a constant reminder of how courage can rewrite entire systems. The irony, Kesha reflected during an interview on 60 Minutes, is that William Blackstone thought he was humiliating me by serving his table for 5 years. In reality, he was giving me VIP access to document every crime he committed. Her laugh was genuine, without malice, the laugh of someone who had found purpose in pain. Dr. Jefferson watched proudly as Kesha spoke to an audience of millions. She had become more than a brilliant lawyer. She was a symbol that systems of oppression could be brought down by the intelligent persistence of people determined not to accept injustice. The real final blow came when Emma turned 18 and took control of her inheritance. Her first action to create the Williams Blackstone Foundation for Deaf Justice. Using her family's money for the very programs her father had derided. William watched helplessly as his own fortune financed the expansion of the rights he had spent decades trying to deny. In a twist that no Hollywood screenwriter would dare to write, Emma legally changed her last name to Williams, adopting the name of the woman who had saved not only her life but her soul. 5 years of waiting tables taught me that true wealth isn't how much money you have, Kesha said in her commencement speech at Gallaudet University, but how many lives you touch positively. William Blackstone never understood that. He confused fear with respect, oppression with leadership. Today, Kesha Williams is one of the most respected civil rights attorneys in the country. Emma is a young activist whose work has already changed laws in 3 states. And William Blackstone, he lives alone, financially ruined and socially isolated, a living reminder that power without humanity is only temporary tyranny. The story of a waitress who served justice along with dinner proves that the greatest revenge is not to destroy your oppressors. It is to build something so beautiful and meaningful that they realize exactly what they lost by choosing hatred over humanity. If this story touched your heart and reinforced your faith in justice, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove human dignity always wins, even when the odds seem impossible.